Hi everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I have some happy mail to share with you using the You Raise Me Up stamp set from Mama Elephant. I got this new stamp set and another one that I'm hopefully going to create with next week for you. But for today's card, You Raise Me Up, this stamp set is adorable. I'm going to use these three cuties stacked on top of each other. Now, something that I wanted to mention about the design is that I was inspired by Laura Bassen. Um, that's the inspiration from Laura is the envelope with the hearts. It's a different envelope and different heart because I use another die set, but she used an envelope with hearts in it during a craft hour with Jeff, and I loved it. It was for Pink Fresh Studio and it was with flowers and rainbow, so I'm not doing that, but I loved how she added those hearts in the envelope. And with this image I thought, well, maybe I can take that element because I love that and I can make it my own by adding a cute image instead of flowers. And I'm not doing the rainbow, although I love a good rainbow, especially with Concord and 9 colored cardstock. But that I'm not doing. This card is going to be really subtle, really sweet, and when I was almost finishing it up, I thought that this design with these colors would have been perfect as well for a baby card. Just change up that sentiment, and if you don't like the image, you can change up the image. But I personally find that these three on top of each other can also be brothers and sisters. For example, that there is another one and now they are with three. Or just because they are cute, it works as well for a baby card, I think. You can change up the colors if you want to. I was definitely doubting between using the blush pink that I am going to use today, as well as the Lagoon inks and etc. that I have from Pigment Craft Co. I love that brand as well, and they have some really subtle gorgeous flower stamps and other stamps. I have a few and I really want to create more with them, but their inks, they have such a unique palette. I truly adore it. That being said, here I'm definitely doing the Copic coloring. I stamped the image out on Transotype perfect coloring paper using Gina K Designs Amalgam ink Obsidian, which is the black one. And then I'm coloring everything in with my Copic markers. If you want to revisit the color combination later on, there is always a blog post, and I link towards my blog post in every description box underneath every video. And on the other side is just idintoreality.blogpost.com, so really simple to retrieve, to find again if you ever need a combination from a specific card that you saw. So the coloring. Maybe important is that I decided to have the light source on the left side, so that means that all my darkening is on the right side of my images or wherever I have an overlap, anything like that. I also elongated the snout from the elephant just to give it a bit more interest, to give it a bit more shadowing in the face. You don't need to, definitely not necessary. But it's always an option if you want to have a bit more of dimension anywhere, to just elongate some of the lines that are already drawn by the illustrator, which I also did for the leg of the elephant, for the leg of the deer. Anything like that can always help you. And then, of course, I'm coloring from darkest to lightest, which is the way I color, but definitely start with a light layer if you prefer doing that, or start with your lightest color if you prefer doing that. In the end, it's all about having fun and liking the end result. Do keep in mind that if you're using the same color combination but you have another technique of coloring in, that your end result can be slightly different than mine, which is something that shouldn't bother you, in personal opinion. But if you're wondering why it's not exactly the same, it's just because of that. Maybe there is a video of Sandy Elnock where she's showcasing 3 images that she's coloring with exactly the same markers, but every time with another technique, and they are completely different images. So if that's the case and you don't like it, maybe it's a technique that you do differently. Another thing is also that I can never recreate a card exactly the same, because I'm never able to color everything exactly the same. It's always a bit different, so I suppose that whenever you are recreating or using a combination from someone else, it's slightly different, just because we're people, we are not machines. We cannot exactly do things the same way over and over, but that's also the beauty about it. So, other elements that I'm using today is a snail mail. That is for the frame that we have there. I thought it was a nice idea with the envelope that I wanted to use. And the envelope is from the pocket Envie, which is an older set from Mama Elephant. But there are many envelope sets out there that you can use. There is a new one from Mama Elephant, and the name is escaping me. But from the March release, there is a new envelope which you could use as well. There is the envelope, of course, of Pink First Studio, which was the inspiration for this card, to try to use that in a way. There are envelopes from Concord 9th, anything you might have at home, or if you don't have a die, maybe you have tiny envelopes just purchased. That can also help. So that being said, for the background, as you saw me just tape off the edges of this sort of postage kind of finishing, I am using the Bitty Dot stencil from Pigment Craft Co., which is an adorable, sweet dotted stencil. You have two in it. You can just reposition your stencil if you want to, or you can use both of them, which I will use. And I just try to not have an overlap in my dots. They are quite random, in my opinion. Maybe there is a logic, but for me, these look random dots. So it was a bit shifting and turning to prevent them overlapping, and I think I have one overlap in the end, but it's not an issue. But I just love this stencil because of the simplicity, because it's really subtle, but still you have a background. So I'm glad that I used it today. So I'm definitely mixing pigment with some of my elephant today. And as you can see, the blush pink was really the way to go for me. That was the color that I took out, but in case I needed two colors, I also took the Medina. As I said in the beginning, Pigment has some really specific color palettes, and they have actually two, so far as I know. And I got one of the two completely, just to get me started with Pigment, and I definitely want these other inks as well, just because they are really unique. There are other brands with blush, but not with this blush, and the Medina and all the others, really cool colors. And you know that if you will use them together, it will work. Another thing that I really like about these inks, as well as with other inks, is that even if I would now ink blend it quite splotchy, it will fade out and become more even, which is a really nice thing about these inks. And in the end, I find on the pictures, even when everything was dry, that it looked like this was just cardstock in the color blush. And that's the beauty about these inks as well. So definitely ink blend with them if you want to have a color like this, because that works, and they truly dry out, they flatten out while drying. So the second heart, I decided to use that Medina to just have a bit of a color difference, to be able to put them next to each other and still have some interest in the hearts. My first heart hadn't really that gradient, so I just added a bit of the leftover Medina on top as well. And then I am going to assemble the envelope. Really simple. I'm just making sure that I can put those hearts inside. So I just need the envelope to work now. And then I tried the hearts, and there was still a gap, and I didn't want there to be wide. I want to have the idea that the envelope is filled completely. So I just did a third heart to be able to fill up that space. You will see that later on when I'm assembling. So for the sentiment, I went for the "Friends are the family we chose," which is a gorgeous sentiment and so true. So definitely adding it on top of this card. But again, while I was trying to see whether the layout was working, I thought this would be a gorgeous baby card. Gorgeous. So let's assemble. I'm going to inlay my panel with the sentiment, so therefore I just temporarily add the frame using some removable or repositional dots. inlaying that panel, and then I will use thin foam squares all over this frame to be able to lift it a little bit but not have too much of dimension, which took me quite a lot of time, but worth it definitely. So I'm trying to add this frame as straight as possible, and then we can start on all of the rest. So first the envelope, I need to figure it out. I want the envelope to still be open, and that flap, I'm not going to add it straight on top of my card. I want it to still be able to move so that it really looks like an envelope. So I decided to use some Scor tape here as well to adhere everything. As I said, the flap will still be movable. The important thing was to not be covering the sentiment while placing this on top of my card. I wanted it to be in an angle to have it a bit of wonky, also with the idea of Laura Bassen in my head. In an angle works the best. So here, those hearts I wanted to add, and as you can see, there is that white gap, and I didn't want that to be there because then it looks really like an empty envelope with two hearts. Therefore, the third heart was really handy. I also used some leftover ink on my brush to give a bit of color, and then I could add these two that are really going to be the stars in this envelope on top. So I'm doing that really simple like that, a bit twisting and turning, and then I will add some thin foam squares on the back of my images there where it is not overlapping the envelope and the frame. So it was a bit fiddling to get the foam squares where they needed to be, but it worked out in the end. I also decided to close up that envelope to not have it open because I will also add the image on top, and I just wanted to avoid it getting too bulky just because the envelope wasn't closed. So that's why I added a bit of liquid glue inside since the hearts were placed, so that was alright. And then once everything is dry, this card actually is finished. You can add embellishments if you want to, but this card is so soft and cute that I thought, well, just leave it like that. With those dots in the back is just perfect as is. So that is my card for today, featuring the You Raise Me Up from Mama Elephant. I truly adore this stamp set. It's so cute. Thank you so much for stopping by and taking the time to watch this video. I truly hope that you enjoyed it. And I'll be back soon with some new crafty inspiration. Bye!